Call the Finance and Audit Committee meeting to order for August 6th at 3:03 p.m. And I'm going to read the statement of announcement. The meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of August 6, 2020 Finance and Audit Committee meeting was distributed on August the 4th, 2020 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The next item on the agenda is, can I get a, I have one correction to the agenda that I'll mention and then ask for a motion. So on item 5, one word was missing in the item 5, so it should read discussion of internal audit committee charter. And other than that, that's the only edit I have. So if I can get a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
Great.
With the amendment you made.
Okay.
Ask him to fix it.
Great. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
So agenda is passed with the correction on item 5 as correct. So the next item on the agenda is the minutes from July 10th, 2020 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes from July 10th?
So moved.
Get a second?
I'm gonna second, although I didn't get to see them because they weren't attached to my stuff. But I'm assuming you saw them, Robin.
Yeah, they were provided to us, I think, in our last commission meeting. I felt like they were attached to that.
Yeah, we did those right after the meeting while the information was fresh, and we probably should provide another copy to you all with the documentation. But yes, that information went out. If Sandra's on, she might comment, but I think it went out maybe a couple days after the last Finance Committee meeting.
Sorry, I didn't see it, but anyways, it's my fault. I didn't ask for them. But anyways.
So I've reviewed them and they looked appropriate to me. So
We can move on.
Can I get a second? Did we get a second on the meeting minutes?
Yeah, I'll just second.
Okay, great. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay. Minutes are approved as presented. Okay, our next item on the agenda is discussion of the internal audit committee charter, and I believe Kevin is going to lead this discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So this is just simply the revision of the internal audit committee charter. Every few years, we pull it out, dust it off, look at it, see if any changes have been made by the Institute of Internal Auditors. So really the changes here, we just had some added verbiage under authority. We added a little bit of verbiage under responsibilities, and then other responsibilities. And pretty much this is just pulled from the model charter with Institute of Internal Audit.
I have a question. Is there a document that's different than 27505 UD?
Yes.
Yes.
We're talking about the internal audit charter.
I don't have a copy of that.
It's not actually numbered. It's in the, isn't it part of the commission?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
trying
not
to
a
remember
direct,
where I found it. It's in the commission policies or something section.
Yeah.
It's not in the directive.
yeah, I forwarded it to you.
Yeah, I've got 2 copies of the same thing. One that was not edited and one that was. I couldn't
Right.
find the actual charter.
That was under a separate email, and that would have been prior to receiving that one. But when I got Chris's email that you wanted copies, I sent it to you. Again, as I referenced in the email when I sent it to y'all, we did also ask, we asked MUSC, Clemson University, and University of South Carolina for copies of their charters for comparison purposes as well. And we got them from MUSC and from Clemson, and USC is actually going through the same revision process right now. So they didn't want to share what's going to be an old document. So other than that, I will entertain any questions that y'all may have.
So the general duties of the DDSN Internal Audit Division is item 27505DD, correct? Just making sure I'm following correct. Okay.
And that's the next topic.
Okay, hold
We're
on.
we're on item number 5 right now, which is the audit committee charter.
Okay, so that is what I don't know if that I have. So that is, which one is that? I don't know that I, what should I be reading, I guess, for that
Yes,
one?
it was, I don't have the email in front of me, but it was emailed to the committee members last week. It's titled SCDDSN Audit Committee Charter, Proposed Changes, July 2020.
Because I'm not trying to be, I've got a PDF that says Internal Audit Charter, January 8th, 2018.
You mean February 8th? You mean February 8th, 2018, Mary?
Yeah, that's what it says. It's titled the charter, but it's actually just a copy of the regular directive.
Right, which is what I was.
So you sent it last week? I'm not getting that email.
Yep, I did.
I'm looking.
So, okay, so Kevin, did you send it to me last week too? Or the
Sent it
committee?
to all the committee members last week.
Okay.
But if y'all don't have this, then do we just want to table this and move on to the next item, and we'll bring this up at the next committee meeting?
Let me just look real quick to see. If you sent it to me last week, then I would have it, and I would have looked at it when you sent it. So,
I didn't get it either, Robin, so.
I'm looking at.
This was a separate email because I had already sent it to them when Chris emailed me saying that you wanted to look at it.
So this was.
Okay, never mind.
This is, Kevin, this is Wednesday, July 15th is what I think you sent out to us, audit committee overview.pdf. Is that what you're talking about right this minute for this item number 5? Or is that different?
Remember July 15th.
Because you sent us something, Kevin, on July 15th that says, thank you for serving on the DDSN Finance Audit Committee, attaches a brief synopsis published by the Institute of Internal Auditors, which provides a condensed version of oversight responsibilities of the effective audit committee.
That was just sent for your information.
Okay.
I got one on the 16th,
Okay, let me look back.
and that one is 2017 Internal Audit Committee and 2020 Internal Audit Committee, doc.
I might be in there.
Ed,
Yes,
Sound like you need to table it.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think we might check that out, Bob.
Ed, do you have it either?
I have one for the 16th. And it has 2 attachments, 2017 Internal Audit Committee. And the second that's a PDF, and the second one is 2020 Internal Audit Committee.
That's it.
That's a Word document.
That's it.
That's a
I didn't
proposal.
get that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the one. And the Word document is the proposed one. That's why it's in a Word document, not a PDF.
okay, yeah, this email was sent to Barry, me, at Mr. Miller, and that's all I see on this email. So,
This one was sent to Robin,
yeah,
Barry, and Kevin was CC'd in it as well. He CC'd himself in it.
Yep, yes, sir. That would have been it.
Yeah.
okay, so,
I'm saying I have that document.
Right. And then I got the email from Chris that said you wanted to see it, and I forwarded it to you in a separate document.
Okay, well,
Okay.
And I acknowledged it.
if we had,
I love that part too.
I mean, I saw it, but I didn't get to read that one, right? I don't know if we don't need to just move on to the next one and do that one the next meeting, because I didn't get to, I mean, I may have gotten it, but I don't remember getting it, so.
right.
I do remember getting the other stuff though, and I do remember getting the 2018 document, but I don't remember getting that, but I may have. But I didn't get to read that, I'm sorry to say.
If y'all
So,
would like to table it, we will table it, and I will resend that email to y'all.
Okay. We'll table that item for our next meeting and go to the item number 6, Directive 27505DD, General Duties and Internal Audit Division Review. Kevin, do you have anything on that?
Yes, ma'am. Same thing. I sent y'all copies of the old document and the revised document. Again, mainly there were some formatting changes. This is the same scenario based on a model charter from the Institute of Internal Auditors. Same organizations, we requested a copy of their audit charter. And looked at that for reference as well. There are some formatting changes, and then there are some, as you can see on the document, there are some strike throughs and there are some additions.
Right.
So without going page by page, I'll just entertain any questions you may have.
So the biggest change that I saw when reading that was that the commission, the DDSN commission would approve audit-specific directives, and not just the state director and the finance and audit committee. That's how the previous version read in some of the sections under authority and others. Is that the case, Kevin? That it's
Yes, that is the change.
okay.
Right, and it should be reviewed by the commission.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
There's a reference to an annual audit plan will be developed by the Director of Internal Audit and submitted to the Finance and Audit Committee. If adjustments are necessary due to changes in personnel, in priorities or priorities of DDSN, the changes will be coordinated with affected personnel. So is there already an audit plan done every year?
There has been one done every year. There hasn't been one done this year. I was waiting to get this done, and then I was going to bring that to y'all next month.
Okay. No audit plan.
It will be, what you will see next month will be significantly different than what has been done in the past.
Okay. Let's see.
I was just wondering if there was any way that there could be something put in here that says that, I don't have a problem with the audit plan being submitted by the internal audit, the director of internal audit. But I'd like them to be able to say before they submit that plan that they've had consultation with the various departments in the agency, because we really are trying to move towards getting this agency audited by internal audit. We spend an inordinate amount of time out in the provider community where I think that we can pick up some of those audits via licensing and via external audit that they have annually required anyway. And yet so many things, like the biggest thing I can think of is it would have been nice if the commission would have been told that cost reports weren't done. I mean, I think that those kind of enterprise risks need to have the eyes and the ears of internal audit, which is why they have the autonomy or the independence to speak to the commission outside of the state director. You don't need to be independent of the state director to speak about providers to the commission. There's not really an inherent conflict there as much as if it's in-house. If there's something going on in-house, I want somebody to be able to review that so that anything we put in place, any process or procedure that we decide to do, that it gets pressure tested by somebody in this agency that reports also to the commission to make sure that you're getting, in other words, if we decide we're going to put a new department in, I want someone to say to you, hey, that's going to cost $1 million. They're doing it one position at a time, but it's going to cost $1 million, and you should know that. I mean, personally, I would tell you, but I want to make sure that from now on, that all that stuff is pressure treated here and you guys, pressure tested, and you guys get to know about it. on the other side of it. I think that internal audit needs to focus internally for a little while till we get these systems up and running correctly. And then maybe after that, just to monitor them to make sure they are running correctly. Few of the things like checkbook and reconciliations and things like that, not that they're not important out in the community, I think they are. But if we put stuff like that into licensing and did that there, we would actually be checking it more often because we'd be doing it annually versus just doing it whenever audit can put it in the audit report and get around to every provider. There's so few of them, but we have to do licensing every year. And we have external audits going on every year. So if it's part of our, what do they call that, ROAP?
Mhm.
I know what that, ROAP, that they would be getting that done. So that was just, the only other thing is in here is I like some words that say, consultation, that we say, hey, we're working on X, Y, and Z. We would like you to put that in your audit plan for next year. We want to make sure they develop enough time and on the schedule to get what we need done in the day.
So, if I may,
Mhm.
historically, what, and Gary, I'm sorry, but I think you're the only one with enough experience. So historically, what we have done in developing our audit plan is we have taken the number of positions we have, figured out the number of hours when you account for administrative, leave time, et cetera, how many hours we have left over to develop the audit work. And then from that, we have put that into a, for lack of a better term, if you will, sort of a generic audit plan in terms of X amount of audit of providers, X amount of DDSN provider work, X amount of audit to DDSN. And then we have done a risk, internally, we have done a risk assessment at the provider level to see who sort of comes to the top of that. So that, again, is what we have done historically. Again, Gary, I'm having to call you out in terms of, I think you will see recently, we have been doing many more DDSN central office audits that you've been receiving recently as opposed to the provider network.
Right.
I will say, the premise in the past has been 80% of our money flows to the provider network. And we look at them both for consumer funds, but we also look at them administratively. And you will see in audits in the past, because we do a summary of audit findings, there have been administrative issues that we have found out there, as well as Medicaid fraud issues, exploitation issues. With that said, and just also in the area and living with what we are living with right now, I think that moving forward, we're going to have to see some of that change simply because of social distancing, et cetera. So what this commission needs to decide is, and I do agree with Mary, that's in terms of if licensing, but right now, about the only presence we have in the field from DDSN perspective is Alliant, which is a third-party contracting agency. It's not even DDSN staff. So what will be put forth, my plan is, next month to put forth at the audit plan is, I think Pat has mentioned that we have talked about enterprise risk management. I'm assuming in conjunction with other management, have developed a risk list. So we will track those items that they have determined are risk. We'll start tracking that and reporting that to y'all on a whatever we decide, quarterly basis. The audit plan, as I see it, we will follow up on the audits that we had standing out there from the provider system. Because to be quite honest, it's number one, you want to follow up to make sure they implemented corrective action. And number two, to be fair, when you audit an organization and then they go in and they make the changes in corrective actions, take the corrective actions, they want another report issued that they have done what they said they were going to do so that their governing board knows they're doing it. So we're sort of tracking off of really this document and getting into what's going to be discussed next month. But
I do agree you need to finish what you started and do what you just said, but then we do need to we do need to focus more inwardly, I think, like Mary was talking about. I think she's exactly right. But the biggest thing I would ask, and it's a little bit off topic, but it's worth mentioning because it's something I've been wanting to ask for a while, and I didn't know the right time to ask it until just for the last couple months, and I didn't know, but I guess this is a good time to ask it since you brought up since Mary brought up cost reports. What is your explanation as to how it wasn't discovered that we hadn't done cost reports in so many years? What would you think? How do you think that happened, or why do you think that happened? What is your best guess as to how that would happen?
Well, I think everybody knew that they weren't being done, but I don't think there was any impetus here to get them done, to be quite honest.
Well, I'm just, not to cut you off, when you say everybody here knew they weren't being done, nobody ever said that to me as a commissioner, that we just weren't doing the reports that we were supposed to be sending over. That was, so that might have been, if that happened, that's news to me. I never recall anybody saying, oh, by the way, we haven't done these cost reports in many, many years and they're due.
So you're saying, so Kevin, you're saying that the executive director and all the senior staff knew they were not being done. Is that correct?
I'm saying that management here, financial management, knew that they had not been being completed.
And the executive director probably as well, right?
You're talking about my position.
Yeah,
Maybe not beyond that.
right,
Yeah, other folks might not have known.
right. We didn't ask the people in like finance.
The deputy director over administration position now is the CFO.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I guess the reason
people
I was
in
bringing
finance.
this up is just to say that we got to make sure that we're catching those big fish as well as catching minnows too. I mean, not that the minnows aren't important, you need them for bait, but you do need to catch some of the bigger things that have gone down the pike. We don't want to run into that again. I did not mean to open a can of worms, so I apologize for that.
Oh, no.
Well, actually, it was an excellent. Actually, I don't apologize. It was an excellent question, and it never has been resolved, and it won't be resolved until we resolve it. And we can't talk to the man who was responsible for it because he's retired, and I assume won't come back before us. But I would love to talk to him. Yeah, I would love for him to come back before us someday, but that's another story. Okay, go ahead.
Well,
But I think that this is Miller. I think that Mary's point is valid, and we need to take a look into what she's saying. Her point is very valid, because you got to be able to do some checks and balances to make sure.
Well, anyway, so we need to put something in that document somehow then.
Well, and I do think that it's in there, to be quite honest. We talk about, because we talk about that our responsibilities are both to the provider network and to DDSN.
There's an item on page 4 under activities, item 4 that says review, evaluate, and follow up on internal audit findings and recommendations with appropriate management staff. So that alludes to internal audit, but I don't know, is it overtly anywhere else in terms of internal?
I was thinking if you look on page 2, well, this is a beautiful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th paragraph down, it says an annual audit plan will be developed by the Director of Internal Audit and submitted for review to the state director has been struck out, and Finance Audit Committee is in there. I don't understand why the state director can't stay in there and to use the word and,
Right.
so that everybody gets to have a look at it and review it.
Mm-hmm.
The authority for acceptance is going to lie with the commission, always does.
Right.
But this is talking about review. This is not talking about the actual approval of the plan. It's just the review of the plan. So to make sure that the documents are seen by everybody prior to them going to the commission for approval, let's all review them together. So if we just take the strikeout on state director and put and.
I would agree to that.
Does that make, is that something like that? I mean, I'm not.
I agree with that too.
I'd like to make a proposal. Me and Kevin have been talking about executive risk management for a while.
Can y'all hear him without a mic?
Can you hear me? Me and Kevin have been talking about executive risk management for a long time, and we see eye to eye pretty close what the need for it. The challenge is we have a small internal audit footprint, and the debate is always going to be, do we go out and do consumer funds, which is critical, and how we do it, versus do we have a footprint in this building to give the commissioners who have an incredible amount of responsibility for the efficiency effectiveness organization, so that you get eyes and ears inside the tent of executive staff. I believe this executive staff, we're transparent to a fault, but that's not going to always happen. So I would encourage clarity in this thing to clearly say it is management's responsibility for the control environment of this organization, and that annually we have to present a risk assessment to really internal audit. Kevin's job is to validate that they're the most important risks. And at the same time, when we affirmatively do something, it puts the burden on us to, now all of a sudden, instead of conveniently forgetting about cost reports, hey, if we haven't done cost reports in there, that's an accountability issue. You could come back on the executive staff here and say, hey, dude, you didn't do cost reports, you're fired. So I think that's a very good control tool for both, particularly for the commission, that we affirmatively tell you what our risks are. Kevin independently validates it, so it gives you confidence that we're not hiding the ball. And then after we agree on that risk assessment, say that's April, May, then all of a sudden, when Kevin proposes his audit program for the year, you're looking at the risk assessments that are going to sink our boat. And you're going to look at the proposal and see that, hey, internal audit is serving the mission of this organization for both objectives, as well as transparency, as well as supporting management. So rather than like prescript what Kevin's going to do every year, I suggest put in a control of management says, these are our risks. He agrees to them. By June 1st, we present them to the commission. And by sometime in July, he establishes his audit program.
Right. And I will say on, well, Robin, to address your question first.
Okay.
Under activities, when you were talking about number 4.
Yeah.
What that is saying is for any audits that we do where we have issued findings and have a acceptable corrective action plan from the auditee, we will then go back and make sure that they have implemented that corrective action plan, that they have taken steps to correct that problem.
Right, and you send these to me often, right? When you do an audit finding, you'll send one to me for different centers like Babcock or different providers. These are the types of things you're talking about when you say that the internal audit findings.
Correct. Every commission member gets a copy of every audit report that we do.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of months ago, we got one from Jasper and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I will say on that same page under activities, on number 1, where we're talking about what's the work that we will be doing, and it says perform schedule audits of service provider organizations, DDSN regional offices and DDSN central office for, again, effectiveness of operations and compliance with standards and policies.
Yeah.
So certainly DDSN central office is considered in that audit, as part of that audit universe.
So that was in there, right? The last few years or whatever, that particular thing for the
only
DDS.
thing we added in that particular step was policies and policy.
But what you're telling me is we don't really do a lot of central office auditing?
We don't do anything.
They have this year because we've asked for it.
On request.
Right.
On request.
Well, and we've done some in the past too. I will tell you historically, the way that we developed our audit plan is sort of the way the money flows. So 80% of our funds go out to the provider network. So that's where we put 80% of our resources. 13% roughly goes to central,
Well, it's not about that. It's also about using our money effectively. I mean.
Right. No, I'm just saying
Okay.
historically, that's what, I'm not, I'm just saying historically, that's the way we've done it. If this body wants us to change that, then certainly we will do that.
I think that's one of the areas we disagree on, and I fundamentally disagree, that 99% of the money goes out there. The problem is, if you affect change at the top of the pyramid, you exponentially increase the impact as opposed to going out and doing single audits on Greenville, single audits in Orangeburg, single audits here. You're only looking at a very small amount of money. If you're up here looking at the controls that we use on how we establish our rates, we would determine many, many years ago that our rates are out of whack and that basically the cut that we were getting for overhead was the reverse. We were actually not getting no overhead. So I think the audit footprint needs to be at the top of the pyramid to get the benefits for enterprise objectives, achieving them. So I think that is, if we're going on the premise you're following the money is really in this building.
Right. No, I'm just saying historically, that's how we have done the audit plan.
Right.
I mean, that's how it was sort of set up, if you will, in terms of following the money.
And
Pat and I have talked about ER, and I'm telling you, I don't have an issue. And I think you can see from the audits that we have done of DDSN, there have been issues. I mean, we didn't walk away with a clean audit. There were findings. So I think that needs to be addressed. I do have some reservation about, I will tell you, the audits that you see now as opposed to when I started, which was what, 07? Right, in consumer fund. And again, Gary, we have seen significant drops in that. And I do think that is because that's a consistent approach to, we're out there consistently looking at it. I will tell you professionally, because I would be remiss if I did not, to walk away from that. I think what we're going to start seeing is that inking back up again. Because if nobody's looking at it, then,
it's right. The essence of my business of that sort of breach is inclination coupled with opportunity, right? You might be inclined all day long, but if you know you're going to get caught, you don't do it. On the other hand, once you know that you're not going to get caught, that inclination becomes really easy to follow. So I agree with you to that extent. And just in general, again, coming back to sort of historically looking at it, one of the first things we did when I first joined the commission was we realized that the whole commission itself had not had an audit in decades.
20 years, I think.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. And so we had one, and the good news was that generally, what we said we actually had. But even then, again, that didn't discover, that audit process did not discover the failure to perform certain duties a la the college reports in terms of something that was reported to us. And I will say, again, from my perspective, well, I think it's important to do what you're talking about, Kevin. I'm going to just speak for myself. The biggest concern that I've got as commissioner is that the information that I receive goes through a funnel. I'm not a full-time employee, and so I depend on other people to provide me the information that I need to make my decisions effectively. Sometimes we find out that we weren't getting that information.
Right.
And in a perfect world, the fact that internal audit is answerable to the commission, that's our check. That's my check, that if everybody else is sort of keeping something in the dark, in a perfect world, somebody from internal audit is going to come to me and say, hey, this particular thing hasn't been addressed. This is a gap in our system that you as a commissioner need to know about, that something is happening here. And I think that's kind of what Pat is referring to have that back check for me of somebody who is within the system, but has an independent route to be able to say something bad is happening, or something is not getting done that should be getting done, that I'm not dependent upon the same filter always to catch that.
Right.
So, if the idea is to, again, it's all about resources, but the idea is to expand that to make sure that element is not just in theory, but is in practice, I would be behind it personally. Again, not being a voting member of this committee, but again, having historically sort of been involved with where we're at. So, I mean, I'm sort of torn. I do like the fact that we focus particularly on consumer funds. I think that's a focus. There may be some other stuff in the external audits that I'm not as concerned about, there's other stuff, but yeah. So
I mean, Medicare fraud is important, but the reality is some of the things that I've seen in my lifetime are not as important, because you're talking about so little bit of money with some of the providers' money that we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about pennies sometimes that we're trying to, literally dollars that we're trying to balance, and that's not as important as, I mean, the one thing that I have seen once before that was important, I thought was Medicare fraud. That's, to me, Medicare fraud, people ought to be put under the jail for, but because that's the state money that's being wasted, which I hate, but it's like Pat was saying, it's a much bigger issue whenever we've had big issues around here that have been a problem that should have been caught, that weren't for whatever reason. And the point is, and it's important to know what those reasons are, which a lot of things we'll probably never get to the reasons for. But the main point for today is we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. And if that means we have to start going internally again instead of externally to put most of our resources internally, that's what we need to do, because it's obvious based upon the millions and millions of dollars that have been wasted over the years that we need to make change. And this would be a great way to make it, it seems to me.
Well, I think from a provider point of view, and I still have that, I know some people don't think so, but I do have a provider point of view. And I think I look at, when I would get these audits, I was looking at materiality too. If you're looking at how X number of checks, you get a report that makes it sound like, it just makes it sound, I used to tell Kevin, it's not always what you're citing, it's how you're saying it. It makes it sound, because it goes to everybody and their brother, that we are doing everything wrong when you might find 2 checks out of 1,000 that have something wrong with them. Yes, they're wrong and we made a mistake, but we're also human beings. We're trying to do that with our indicators too, to say that if you miss 1 TB test out of 150, we're not going to chop your head off for it. There's got to be some level of materiality to show that you've got a systemic problem versus just one-offs. And I would like to see us address that more in the way we audit and the way we write up our audits for folks. But going down the road in the future, we know that we are looking at our whole quality management system. So none of the changes we're talking about are going to be taking place tomorrow, but we're looking at our Alliant contract that's up in 2 years, changes in the waivers in 2 years. We got a lot of things gliding down the path over the next 2 years, and we would like to put more of that oversight into other avenues. Chris has been working with auditors to try to get them trained to get our information the way we need from them and to know what they're looking at, so that I think a lot of this can be addressed through both. And maybe this is more of a transition year where we start moving one way or the other. We might find that we need more staff in QA to do some of this auditing of providers. Maybe that's not an internal audit problem, So those are the discussions we're having right now. So I'm glad to hear that we are looking internally, and as we change processes, it sure would be nice to have someone that we can hand something off to and say, look, this is what we're thinking, run it, see if it's going to work. It would have been nice to know that our residential rates were flipped on the other side, and we thought we were taking part for our admin when we were really losing all state dollars throughout the whole thing. So, I want to make sure we keep all the match up off the floor. And we're actually using all that money. So basically, I think this policy, I think it's got a lot of changes in it other than just, just some word changes. And I really haven't had a whole lot of time to look at it. So
why don't we just table this until the next meeting? I mean, it looks to me like we got more work to do and need to table it until the next meeting.
I would agree with that.
I'm good with that unless there's some timing.
I also think both of them go together. The charter and this kind of go together. And if we table the charter, we probably should table this so we can put them together.
Well, I will say, that's one thing I was going to say, trying to bring it back. I do think under activities, I know what we keep saying, but I think that is covered in activities under number 1. We tabled the charter, but we added a whole risk management section to the internal audit committee charter. Bless you.
Just went down the wrong pipe. And I know in COVID, we're not allowed to swallow wrong anymore, because if we cough, apparently we're diseased. I'm just going to go outside and cough.
Meeting adjourned, right?
I took a drink of water.
But we did, under that internal audit committee charter, and as soon as I leave here, I will resend that to y'all. We have added an entire section under risk management. We've added the risk management section. And the first bullet in there is obtained from the Director of Internal Audit an annual report on management's implementation and maintenance of an appropriate enterprise-wide risk management process. And Pat, that was added for your benefit.
All right.
Crash it in.
Pardon me?
In the past, we had nothing to audit because there was not much structure to audit.
I will say that, and we have been to providers and sometimes interior, inside DDSN, there wasn't really a structure to audit, but that's been being worked on.
Yeah, the only thing I would correct there, Kevin, I think that's supposed to be for our benefit. That just Pat's.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, well, then I think I think we're all in agreement that we'll spend somewhat more time on these two items. The internal audit committee charter and the Directive 275-55-DD, and we will revisit that in our next meeting after we have more time to review the documents, have more questions, and make any additional changes that we might want to make to that before we can finalize it.
Okay, I move that we table those two until the next meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Okay.
All right.
All in favor?
Robin,
Yeah.
to follow up. So my action items at this point are really to resend the email that has the audit committee, the internal audit committee charter, correct?
Yes, you can do that. Yeah.
Everybody has what we've been talking about the last 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think everyone has the directive. We just didn't have that document from July 16th. Or we all hadn't looked at it deep enough as well. But that was.
And we need
I
to
don't
ask
think
that Pat would meet with you again and go back over it so we can figure out what y'all both would like to see on it and that sort of thing for the next meeting. Wouldn't that be right?
That'd be good.
I mean, I don't mean to put words in nobody's mouth,
We'll put our comments on it too, because right now the only comments you have on there are Kevin and his team. So if we've got anything that's different or we agree with it, we'll put that on there too.
And I don't think that Stephanie and I were copied on that. So again, since we're here, I mean, we're not voting members of the committee, but we're going to be expected to vote on something in commission. It would probably be helpful if it was actually sent out. So this is a significant issue. To extend it beyond just the committee for discussion, it would be very helpful.
That
for
is
us to
correct.
see
I
that.
did not receive it either, and I would like to look at it if you don't mind.
I will send everybody copies of the internal audit committee charter, and I will send Gary and Stephanie, I will send y'all copies of the audit charter that we were just discussing.
Okay.
And then,
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I know I'm at the bottom of this agenda, but this really covers everything that internal audit had. So with your permission, we're going to excuse ourselves and go send emails and turn our attention to other items that need our attention.
Okay.
fine with me.
No problem. Okay.
And it's nothing wrong with good eyes. I say use the term good eyes, looking things over because it protects all of us.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay. Well, then we will move on. Since we've decided to table items 5 and 6 on today's agenda.
I'll send both of them to you.
And we'll move on to Directive 103-01-DD, Federal Grant Application and Change Policy Discussion that Chris is going to lead.
Yes, nothing has been sent out in regard to this. Really what I'm looking for here is some guidance as I'm new to this, and I think we're changing a little bit on how DSN does things. We've had 2 directives referred to us as a policy, as a committee from the policy committee. I need guidance from you all how you want to handle. Do you want, for the federal grant application and change policy, it's a very, very small policy. In fact, I don't even think it should be a policy. I think it should be in the executive limitations policy. It's just talking about that you guys will approve any federal grants that we apply for before we receive the funds, which I think is a little weird. I think you should approve it before we submit the application. But anyways, I don't really think it warrants its own directive. So I would like to know what the pleasure of the policy of the Finance and Audit Committee is in regards to how you want me to approach this particular directive.
Is
We
this-
can,
It's literally like 6 sentences, 6 rows.
And
well, we should fix that to say that we want to see it before we apply. I mean, before it's sent out.
I
And
mean,
if the policy committee needs to go back to it, we can. Oh, the conference room just went out. Does everybody know that?
No.
We're here, I
we're
think.
here.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
we
hear
can
you.
hear you.
The
Okay.
picture,
Camera went down.
the camera went down. Yeah.
Anyway, clearly it needs to say that we want to see it before it's sent out. Wouldn't we? I mean, why wouldn't we?
I don't know, why couldn't we put that in?
Sometimes the timelines are just really short. There's like a 2-week period from the time of what's it called?
We can't hear you, Susan, you're gonna have to come sit up here. Well, I can hear you, but they can't hear you.
You're talking about a lot of times there's not enough time for them to actually take action.
Yeah,
between the time-
in my experience applying for federal grants, sometimes it's a 2-week turnaround, so it'll get posted at the federal level and you've got 2 weeks to write it and submit it as an application. So that would be my guess why it's written that way, but
Understood.
we don't apply.
And yeah, that does happen.
You found that to be true too, yeah.
But
It's
you would have
ridiculous.
time before the grant award was to get to the
Yes.
commission and say,
Right.
we will not accept this grant.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's been treated in the past as sort of a ratification of, hey, we need to get this in. We want you to ratify that, yes, we're going to accept the grant. And if we don't, then basically the application went in, but we're just not going to accept the money. I think
Right.
we've done that in the past a couple of times.
Okay, so.
What that
Can-
camera doing.
Can you give me an example of what kind of grant we'd be going after, just to have a context? of
So
grant?
SCDOT grants are federal funds. We just put in a $10,000 grant application for an energy rebate for our HVAC systems. We apply for caregivers relief, provider relief funds we're about to work on that's on our agenda. So there's a host of things that come up.
Sometimes there are some federal health-related grants that would provide some money to do some innovative services or some things like that that'll kind of come through.
FEMA grants
Yeah.
that we apply for, either for those generators, for the providers, or, disaster relief type
Okay.
things.
Okay. So, Chris, you want us to make a decision on what right now regarding this?
Well, I haven't brought before you a recommended policy, so we kind of got into the details of what actually in it. Really what I'm looking for,
It's procedure.
really 2 things on on number 7. Do you guys agree that it needs its own directive? Because I thought it really fit in the executive limitations policy, but that just got approved, I think, just recently.
Okay.
I don't mind it being on its own. It's just kind of weird. And then secondarily, how should I handle things like this? Do you want me to make comments, send it to all members, have them give me feedback, send it back with any changes y'all have recommended, and then put it out through public comment? And that's why I'm glad Susan's here, because I'm trying to understand. I'm not used to this type structure, so I just want to make sure we do it right. And I
Sure.
want to make sure the committee has a chance to know what
Sure.
their role should be.
So one format that we're using with policy committee that seems to be working, I mean, most of you are here, you can tell us if it's working or not, but we're taking a directive like this and we would do staff markups and then review it with the chair and make sure it sounded like a good recommendation to go forth. And then we would share that marked up red line version with the committee and get it on the agenda. And then you all would discuss it in this meeting, and then you determine if it was in good shape that you wanted to approve it to go to the commission meeting for approval.
When's the
Under
public-
your
when's the
finance and audit
public
committee.
comment period in there?
Right. In some cases, there's a if it's not a commission policy, you're right, it does go out for the 10 business day.
Where is that at in the process?
So that would be, the way.
Why would
to be-
this need to
be
go out for
consistent-
public comment anyway?
Yeah, so
Why
to
would
be
this be in-
consistent with kind of how we're doing it with policy committee, the committee would get it in good shape. And then it would go out for the public comment, then you write down all the comments, bring it back to the committee to look at it. So it's a multi-step review.
Okay.
Unless your committee wanted to just refer directive
And-
the staff to go and approach the external review 10 business days before they bring it to your committee. So there are a variety of ways to do it.
So how do you want to handle this, Robin? That was the only reason I put that on here. And then also, if you guys want to keep it separate, I mean, we can go either direction. That's the only thing I wanted to go over with that particular item number.
I would say to follow the pattern that that was just outlined.
I agree with that.
For this particular thing. And but to Barry's point, do we need a public comment on a very minor directive that doesn't have really any substance to it?
We do have a directive that requires external review to changes to DD level directives. So the only kind of document that doesn't have to go out for public comment are commission policies, because they're just about the commission. So if you're following the electronic communications and directive review policy, I don't know the number, but it does say that all these directive changes will go out for external review for 10 business days.
Right. We have to follow the grant directives.
Yeah.
We don't have any choice in the matter.
Well,
Yeah.
that also means that internal audit directive needs to go out too, because that's a DD. That's
It is.
not a commission
Yeah.
policy, that's
Yeah.
that's a DD.
Right.
So,
But I like
but
what you're saying.
the other option is we could fix the problem by putting it in that we could go back as a policy committee for not this month right here because we just had the meeting, but next month we could go back and put it into that staff linkage policy and fix it, because that don't need to go out for public comment. We could fix it next month and have it straight, and we could assume we were going to have it straight, and we could go ahead and fix that part. I mean, we can fix it through the policy committee. We've done it, we like that kind of stuff. I mean, it's whichever way you want to do it. I'm not opposed either way, but I'm just saying we can fix it through the policy committee real easy.
I think also, though, if you're going to mark a directive obsolete and absorb it into another document, there would still be some, I know that sounds weird, but there should be an external review period for marking it obsolete as well. This is such an inconsequential topic. I think that it sort of makes it sound irrelevant to do that, but if there's a change to what requirements are that are in a directive, then the other directive dictating that procedure is that it should go out for 10 business days, even if you're going to mark it obsolete. So this is all good to think about, because maybe that directive needs to change a little bit. If it's marked for obsolete, maybe y'all don't want to do that, but right now it reads that if you're going to change a directive, at the point it needs to go, it would go for 10 business days review. It doesn't say which kind of change, this just says changes. So
Okay, so I think at this point then we'll have Chris mark up the changes and share it with us, similar to the policy, the way that things are done on the policy committee. We'll just follow the same thing on this, even though it's very minor. Just keep it separate. Keep it as it is. That's my thinking based on everything I've heard today. Is anyone?
If that's the committee's pleasure, we'll certainly move that direction.
Okay.
And we must always remember to keep in mind, we following the granting authority anywhere it goes.
Yeah.
exactly right, yeah.
Yep.
So things may shift, so we're not gonna worry about that. When it comes in, we'll follow the,
right.
to the game.
Okay, well,
You don't
I'll
get-
have that ready for you guys. This is an easy one, so I will get that revised in the next week, within the next week, and get it out to make sure Mary and Pat have a chance to review it and internal, and then we'll get it to you all for your review of it, and then we can take it to the next step.
Sounds good.
Okay. Sounds good. So we'll move on to the next item. Directive 2014 DD Community Capital Funding Application discussion by Chris.
Again, this is similar to 7, just want to let you know, this particular directive, it relates to how we fund capital projects for our provider network. It needs significant rewrite. One particular area is related to our new capital funding approach, which is limited to $25,000 match for housing trust fund applications as well as sprinkler systems, and making sure that we really identify what our new capital approach is going to be. Now, it hasn't really spoken to that kind of level in the past, but I think it leaves room for interpretation now that probably we want to button up and make sure it's clear. And then there's some procedural stuff that needs to be revised. So again, this one's going to be a little bit more to it, and we've already got an initial stab at revisions done internally. I don't think Pat and Mary have seen it or anyone outside my department, but if it's okay with you all, we'll handle it in the same manner as item 7. And if Mary and Pat don't have significant concern with anything in it, we can probably have it as well ready for the next committee meeting.
Okay.
Okay. If anyone doesn't have any questions on this, then we'll move to the next item if that sounds good to me.
Everybody good?
Good.
All right.
All right, moving along to the next item.
Yeah,
Right,
okay.
Other directives for Slate for fiscal year 2021 review discussion.
Right, so the policy committee is really, really active. They've sent out a list of all the directives that are on Slate for this fiscal year. We have 7 finance-related directives, 4 facility and fleet-related directives, and 7 IT directives. These are the directives that fall under me. And what I'm trying to get guidance on here is we've told Susan and the policy folks the timelines we plan to follow in regards to submission of these to the policy committee, and I'm trying to figure out how we go about deciding. Again, this is all new to me, and maybe this should have been an internal conversation I had instead of bringing it before you all, but which policies does the finance folks, this group, want to see? Surely y'all don't want to see the IT things and the facility and fleet type things, like the facility stuff. It's about our energy management plan. It's about let's see, our maintenance of our physical plant, which is how we maintain our own regional centers and our central office. The vehicle management program, which is merely, outlining like tracking mileage and receipts and all those kinds of things. So is that something the policy committee decides to kick to the finance committee, or the finance committee decides they want to take these up?
So we would take your advisement for sure and discuss it internally and make a recommendation to Commissioner Malphurs as the chair, and then he would help kind of slot. Is it going to go to refer to Finance and Audit Committee or stay within Policy Committee? So this conversation is very helpful for us to kind of learn what should ultimately be referred to another committee from Policy Committee.
Yeah, the finance ones, if you want to hear those, are personal funds maintained at the residential level. So that is an internal, how we manage cash at the regional centers. Fees for residential services provided by DDSN, that is related to fees that we charge again at the regional centers. Missing property reporting, which is more if we've lost a computer or something like that. The individual clothing and personal property at regional centers. The federal grant one that we just talked about. The capital applications one we just talked about. And then ICF personal funds directive, which goes into, that's also strikes out to the ICFs in the community. It's not only our ICFs, but also community ICFs. So those are the 7 finance-related ones that are on our agenda for this year.
Okay. I'm inclined to keep, if I think about finance and audit, which is the title of this committee, I would think that we would just stick with things that are financial in nature and that are audit in nature. So, I would make a suggestion that we only keep our committee works on the finance items only and not some of the IT and the fleet directives that you mentioned. And if anyone feels differently on this committee, but that's my suggestion.
I agree.
I agree. Just look at the list again, Robin, and send me an email and tell me which ones you want us to take, and we'll take it.
I can do that, Robin.
Okay.
And just from, again, historical perspective, I think if there's ever been a dispute, it goes to the chair to make it, because ultimately the chair assigns business to the committees. So if there's ever a dispute, you just have the chair decide, okay, this is in that committee and this is in that committee.
Okay. Good to know. All right.
And Robin, you and I can talk if you have any questions about any of that, or if we want to discuss it further, we can do that ourselves.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, Chris, I think you'll just send the list to us or to me, and then Barry and I will discuss, any other additional information that or questions that I might have with him, and then we'll make a decision to let you know which committee is going to take it. I'm leaning, like I said, towards us keeping the financial ones only, and giving all the others to Barry, but
we'll take whatever you give us. We don't mind at all.
Okay.
Barry.
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Just keep loading up that cart.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're good with that topic, and we can move to the next item on our agenda, which was, let's see, are we at number 9 or 9?
10.
10. Okay, fiscal year 2020 final cash position.
Yes. Okay. Well, I feel it's very important that we close the loop when it comes to information at especially critical junctures such as fiscal year ends. And when I reported at the July commission meeting, I stated that we were projecting about a $20 million cash surplus. In fact, we ended the year right around 13 million, which is a significant variance, and I wanted to explain what's behind that variance. And again, prior to Pat, I guess it was before I got here that Pat started kind of asking finance to start doing cash projections. It was very, very rudimentary for fiscal year 2019. It's become much more advanced in 2020, but we still have a ways to go. There's a lot of moving parts. We're very subject to our providers and if they're doing their job on time as far as getting billing done, and what timing we have on invoices that are turned in if people are waiting a long time to turn things in. So basically, here's what happened in regards to the variance. First of all, we had one huge residential provider that did not submit their May res logs by the due date. As a result, our June deposits were down 1.1 million because they had to wait until the July 5th date to submit May and June's billing. So $1.1 million because that one provider did not do their submission. Their residential director was on vacation. And we've asked them to address that they shouldn't rely on just a single person, to do that. If we didn't have enough cash, if we were like last year where we ended with 150,000, it would have been belly up. So, I mean, we are very subject to that, to them doing their thing. We have a $400,000 baby net admin contract that we projected getting that we have not received yet, but we anticipate getting from Health and Human Services. Also $300,000 in enrollment administrative costs that we are paying providers for Medicaid enrollment activities, and we're supposed to get that through an admin payment from HHS, and we have not received that yet. We're still working through those details with their folks. We had $1 million projected for first filled slots. What that is as folks come on our waiver, we become responsible for all state plan Medicaid services, and HHS provides us part of their state appropriation through a transfer to us for the match money associated with those first filled slots, or those people that are initially enrolled in waiver. So that was $1 million. We have, I don't know if we've received it as of today either. We have not, but we're expecting that. And then we had a $765,000 issue with Medicaid. They did not send us our match for ICFs, the 6.2% FMAP. They did not adjust the state piece properly to credit us back. So we are in the process of pursuing that $765,000. So that's $3.6 million in revenue that we projected that we did not receive, but will receive. As far as the expense side payout, we have been really focused on trying to get the right stuff in the right year, because I think you've heard us talking to providers and in the commission meeting that we want providers to get their stuff in on time so we can close our year out properly. It really hurts us when we have stuff crossing over into the incorrect years, and sometimes you'll have 13 months of activity in one year and 11 in another, and it makes it very hard to project and be on top of your trends. And so we did a really, really good job of pushing our qualified providers this year to get their invoices in on time, and as well as internally to ensure that we get them processed and paid in the proper year. So this fiscal year, we actually had 13 payments to the QPLs, because we not only paid May's invoices in June, but we paid June's invoices in June. So there was $7 million extra that last year was paid in July. This year we got it paid and charged to June. There's what's called a 13th month. And so we didn't physically pay it in June, but it goes against your June cash because you code it the 13th month. And so that's $7 million. And so between those three, all those things, that's $11 million difference. And that's why our cash projection was off. So we're actually not, it's not like we did a bad job projecting. There are good reasons for why those numbers were off significantly. A lot of it with timing. It's just timing. Barry, you had a question?
I'm sorry, I'm not an accountant. I shouldn't even ask this question, I don't guess. But they wouldn't have been proper to just wait and not pay the bills until July?
We cannot do that. We can get in trouble with the state. In fact, they kind of gave us a nasty look last year when we had a lot of stuff stuck in July that belonged in June. We are part of the state's audit, and they have to issue a clean opinion on the state, and we are just one piece of the state. And no, if every state agency was playing games with their invoices and not getting them in the right year, then the state would have a real issue with their audit.
I thought they were July's invoices, and you were paying them.
They were June's invoices that we got coded to June this year like they should have been, instead of like last year. June's bills were coded to July of this year. So this year, fiscal 20 that we just closed, when I say this year, we not only had July, which was June's bills for the prior year, we also had June's bill in June this year like it should have been. So we had 13 QPL payments of $7 million, that we coded to fiscal 20. And so we're actually doing a better job in finance, of getting our accounting straightened out. And thank you, Debbie. Debbie's in here, Debbie Wilson, and her team are really, really trying hard to address these issues.
I hate to jump in here and
Hey, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But no, I apologize. I've got a 4:30 that I've got to take a couple minutes beforehand, so I'm going to have to be dropping out of the meeting for the 4:30.
Okay. Thank you, Gary, for
Moving
attending.
on, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. So, anyone else have any questions for Chris on this update?
I'd like to just make a comment, just to help provide some perspective to the commission, to the new commissioners. I've been tracking the cash closely since I've been here for many obvious reasons. And we have had a pattern of minus $4 or $5 million negative operating for many years. It slowed a little bit last year.
2019.
2019, I think we turned, we stopped, and then now with all the things that have been going on, I think this is the year you're starting to see the benefits. And I would just add, I'm doing the math in my head and I'm getting off, but I think it'd be good for the commission if we could extract out the FMAP money in our cash balance. And in my math, it's very positive, just so that you can see pulling FMAP out, which was 17.1, and we've used, I think, 5.6 of it already, plus some other things. What our cash balance would be, because I think as a commissioner, that would give us confidence that we've stopped the negative flow and we've actually turned it to the positive. And I'll let Chris do the math, but just my head math is better than I expected. So I think that'd be very, providing assurance to the commission that as Chris says, the rigorous business practices that we're trying to follow are paying dividends in keeping expenses down and getting revenues up without hurting anybody. But, maybe we couldn't do the elective stuff we were known for in the past, but a large part of that is a function of the different way we cost settle, that we just don't get the windfalls every year under two-way settlements that we used to. But I think that'd be helpful for commissioner to show fiscal prudency that Chris brought.
I don't want to delay the 4:30 appointment, but as a policy, we do need to address the reporting so that everything will be on time with those agencies that have to report. We just need to look into that and make sure that they are aware. We don't go on vacation.
It's much better than it used to be.
Yeah. Debbie bird dogs that every month. I mean, on the fourth day, you'd run a report to see who has not done their job, and you personally right now are calling them.
I actually have a staff member right now that's actually sending emails to everybody that has not submitted a live check.
When we go fee for service, that's their cash problem, not ours. And so if they're not turning their logs in on time, they won't get $1 million.
Right.
So that, what we're trying to enforce with people now, and I'm using a pat term, we're doing spring training. You guys are providers, need to get in a good habit of making sure that you're turning your paperwork in timely, because when we flip these to fee for service, you want to ensure that your revenue and cash flows are in place. You don't want to wait till we do it and then start practicing.
Right.
So.
Amen, brother.
I don't want to delay the 4:30. Go ahead.
Oh, he's already gone.
Oh, he's gone.
Gary dropped off.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, Gary dropped off since he's,
Okay.
not officially on our committee, so he can go whenever he needs. So, okay, but I do want to continue down the agenda so we can finish on a decent hour. Any other questions on the cash position that Chris has kind of given us an update on? If not, we'll move on to the next item.
Let me just say that if Pat needs to say anything else, that he needs to get closer to the microphone next time.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll take my mask off.
He's also got a mask on, so it just adds to the problem. But if I may, I'm not going to belabor the point either, but you got to take the trajectory that we've been on. That that first year was it was kind of like, phew, we just made it. Thank God someone didn't send their billing in late, right? And so this year we saw mid-year that we were going to start putting to the tune more of in like $2 to $3 million to the plus versus $157 and change. $157,000 and change. But so and I think a lot of it has to do with finding those holes trying to get people to bill properly, looking at very bad and lax billing processes that folks have. So, and I think that the more we talk about, as you go fee for service, this is going to be on you. This is the time to practice and get it right. So if you've got a person that goes out on vacation, my God, have a redundancy system there. You can't just let it fall on the floor. So, but I think that they've learned that lesson, and we can.
Okay.
It used to be a lot worse. Chris's department's working very hard on that.
All right, thanks, Mary, for that additional insight and info. Okay, so we'll move on to number 11, PPP, EIDL, provider relief funds, matters of consideration. Chris.
Okay, well, this is a topic that we've been wrestling with here internally. As providers have, and I'm speaking primarily about our DSN boards, not our QPL providers, because qualified providers that are on a fee-for-service basis, they're not getting any funding from us unless they provide a service. So this is really geared towards our 39 DSN boards that we fund on a bands basis. They have gone out and secured a variety of funding sources. PPP, we've talked about before, the Paycheck Protection Program. I was able to run a database. The SBA, under much pressure, released publicly a list nationally of all PPP loans that were provided to entities. I have run those databases and tried to scrub the data to identify our providers in the list. And we do have a host of providers that have received over $1 million in PPP. And I know several have received over $1.5 million. And so they're sitting on these funds, only have 24 weeks to spend these funds, and it's very limited on what you can claim towards them, such as payroll and rent and utilities and things of that nature, not PPE. And then you've got the emergency impact disaster loan. I think that's what the I stands for. I think that's it. Economic impact disaster loan. Those are also SBA loan programs. And then the provider relief funds is something brand new that we've actually worked hand in hand with the providers. Pat took the lead on that, and a lot of folks are out there getting these funds, which are real happy about that. They're getting 2% of their Medicaid revenues. So a lot of providers are getting anywhere from $50,000 to a couple $100,000 in additional funds. And those are federal funds that have strings tied to them, as well as spending requirements. And then there's also FEMA. FEMA is out there. Those FEMA grant requests are due, I think, this month. And the FEMA public assistance grants are also available for a lot of this COVID-related stuff. Then you have our normal funding that we provide, the bands. And a lot of folks are flush with these different revenue sources. And the problem is trying to tease out how to advise them to account for these funds and to ensure that we protect our ability to support our rates with CPE or certified public expenditures with Medicaid. There are a lot of complicating factors with this because these funds cross fiscal years. The accounting standards boards, GASB and FASB, have both said for PPP that you cannot recognize revenue until the bank actually forgives your loan, which could be a year or two after this fiscal year we're in or prior year. And so we are facing having expenses stuck in this year and last year with no revenue, and the revenue stuck in fiscal year 21 or 22 potentially. So there's a lot of issues here. And so the reason I'm bringing this before you is we are trying to develop a path forward, both in advising our providers how they should handle this, telling them how we want it reported in our audit reports, and then finally, how do we oversee compliance and ensure that we don't have any issues in regards to how costs are being captured and reported. And so Pat, Mary, and I met last night, and we discussed this, and what we landed on is we wanted to recommend to the committee that we develop a separate schedule for the audit. We've issued our audit directive back in March prior to this occurring. I guess it was occurring at the time, we just didn't know.
We didn't have all this legislation coming.
We didn't even know
Right.
coronavirus was a thing at that time, I don't think. But anyway, so we issued that, and a lot of things have changed this year after we issued that directive. And so what I want to do is issue an audit directive supplement that will outline a variety of things that have come up since then. One of those being, here's a schedule that you guys need to complete so that we know where these funds are being used. Then, to couple that, once those reports are turned in, we would like to send out a request for proposal for independent audit services for us to hire an auditor to go in and audit these schedules on our behalf with our particular direction on what we want them doing. This wouldn't be a financial statement audit, it would be an agreed upon procedures engagement. And so that would allow us, the problem is, if DDSN goes out and vets this, we obviously could be in a position of self-interest, or at least accused of being in a position of self-interest. So that's our recommendation to the committee. And I would like to hear any other recommendations y'all might have. And then also, if you would like me to bring forth at the next meeting this supplement, or if you feel we can issue the supplemental directive without committee approval. And now I'll just let y'all speak.
Tied it in a knot, that's for sure.
Well, we need to know who is double getting money and who's not. This is federal, all of this is federal government money or state government money, so it's all government money. So they need to be able to comply, just like you said, about telling us exactly what they did and did not get. And for those that do not respond, then we just need to automatically assume they got money and start withholding the money from them that we would normally give them, is the way I would see it. But the biggest thing is that I assume this would go out to all 39 providers, and that they'd be forced to fill out this form that you're talking about to make sure whether they received it or not and how much they received. Is that correct?
That's my recommendation.
Okay, well, if that's your recommendation to send it to all 39, that's mine too. And if they do not fill it out, then we work at it from there. But bring to us next month who didn't fill it out in the last 30 days.
Well, this would be
We cannot allow them to double dip like that.
This would be a schedule that would be in their audit report. It'd be a back schedule. Their auditor would need to assist with drafting of that schedule, and then we would hire our own. The problem is, if they turn in their audit incorrectly, that means the cost report is going to be wrong.
Right.
Then let's say the cost report's wrong and we hire this auditor and we didn't actually have them do this throughout their year-end closeout. Now we've got this whole revision that we got to figure out, and we could have to redo cost allocations and all kinds of things. So to me, it needs to be done in this year's audit, and it needs to be a schedule in the audit report.
I agree with Chris, because this corona money is a gray herring, and I agree with everything. I agree with how you outline the structure that we should follow, so that at the end of the day, we don't get caught in that mousetrap. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I rest my case.
Mm-hmm. Clearly, we need to do that. But the ones that have already received $1 million and $1.5 million, we need to already be figuring out what are we going to do about them right away, instead of waiting on them to fill out a form and all this. Because you know which ones have already gotten $1 million to $1.5 million, and they got to be, and that money's got to be recouped. I mean, as soon as possible.
By us.
Well, there's some philosophical and theoretical issues that we need to probably land on and have a side discussion. I don't know if it's the time now to do it, or if we need to set another meeting up, because it's pretty involved and in depth when you start digging into this.
Yeah.
Basically, let me give you a little bit of information. We have DSM boards, well, and QPLs, but DSM boards who we're talking about are required to submit in a self-submitted financial report to us on a quarterly basis. We had 27 providers at the time that we ran this report yesterday or the day before. Yesterday. Which I checked today, and we have 36 providers because we kind of got on them and said, hey, you guys are late. You need to get your information in. But pulling those 27 providers, they had $60 million in cash. They had, for the quarter, cumulative, a $1.7 million surplus, but this is with all the day program closures, us recouping their money, all those negative things, and we had a $1.7 million surplus for these 27 providers cumulative. Now, some lost money. They had lost $1.9 million through March before COVID hit, but now they made 1.7. This 1.7 does not include the provider relief funds because that's happening now, and this does not include PPP because it could be in their bank account, but it's not in their revenues because they haven't earned any of the revenues yet. When I pulled the 36 providers, they have $72 million in cash. Last year, they had $57 million in cash and $7 million in investments. And if they filled the report out correctly, which I don't know if they have, we only asked them for their unrestricted cash and investments balance. So we're talking $64 million last year, apples to apples, and $72 million currently with 3 providers missing. In that $72 million is a large chunk of PPP money, probably over $10 or $15 million, if I had to guess. So they shouldn't have put it in there because we asked for unrestricted. It says submit your reconciled unrestricted cash and investments balance. These are clearly restricted funds. If you read anything in the accounting language, they have sample journal entries out there and everything to tell people how to record this stuff. And it says restricted cash. So it should not have been reported, but I think most providers are. So I just want to give you kind of the lay of the land. The reason I bring that up, this is also after us pulling $3.6 million back in the day program recoupment, okay? The issue I have is the first hurdle you have to clear with some of these is that you had no other money to pay for these things. And so that's the philosophical issue we have to figure out. If you're making money and you don't have PPP in your revenues, then how are you saying that you needed that money to operate? So there's a real dilemma in regards to all this and how to give guidance properly to this group.
Right, and so all the money that they got from PPP that they didn't really need to get, or even whether they needed to get it or not, we need to recoup that money from the money that we would normally give them in the band payments. We have to recoup the money back that they got from PPP. We cannot allow them to have both.
I don't think we can do that, Barry, because first of all, PPP has to be spent in a certain manner, and you have to clear certain hurdles to even say that you're using it properly, which the first hurdle is that you have an economic loss. We can't pull back Medicaid funds. They already have the Medicaid funds. If we pull back the funds, in essence, what we're saying is that we should pocket all their PPP money. It's almost the opposite argument they're making on FMAP, is that, so y'all got all this PPP, we want all of your bands back up to the amount of the PPP. That really doesn't work, I don't think, when you look at the regulations as far as Medicaid rules as well as PPP rules. We can have a conversation about that if you still feel strongly about that, but we have looked at this in a lot of different ways, and I don't think I can get to that same conclusion.
Have we checked any of the other states about this particular issue? Because I'm sure there's.
Nobody can answer. I've talked to SBA in Washington DC.
You don't know the answer.
I have talked to them on the phone, and we have numerous email exchanges. I have talked to HHS
No,
here
there-
locally, and
State
What's
agencies.
that?
No other state agencies in other states.
when I talked to Medicaid, the folks here in Columbia, they hadn't even thought about the issues that this posed. And so they had not even been asked, or nobody else had brought it up. And so I have not checked back with them recently, but nobody has been able to give me any guidance, no matter where I've gone. I've even tried the Inspector General, the Federal Inspector General as well. And I got to circle back with them because they kicked me to SBA, and now SBA is kicking me back to them. So.
Okay, well, let me just give you one.
Yes.
Let me just give you one portion that you can think about that we can definitely recoup, and we can figure out how else we can recoup it from here. But any of the money that that these people receive extra in God, where's my mind? What do y'all call it whenever you give them an extra beyond the
Outlier.
band?
Outlier.
Any outliers you give them that has to do with the payroll could be recouped because they got it from PPP is for payroll primarily and health insurance secondarily and those kind of things. So that money could clear. They don't need to get any outlier. And if they did get any outlier, we need to take it back.
I don't, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. I mean, the issue is the payroll has to be for people that you were going to lay off that would not have had a job if it weren't for PPP. These folks are still watching these folks.
Yeah, but they're using it for everybody. They're not using it just for those. They're using it for everybody.
What are we referring to? I'm sorry.
The providers are if you get X amount of money for payroll, they're not going to decide, well, this person would have been laid off, so we're going to spend it on this person, but we're not going to spend it on that person. They're just going to put it in the payroll budget and pay the people out of it.
No, have you looked at the forgiveness application and the calculation that's required to submit to get a PPP loan forgiven?
Not yet, but I have. But I know plenty of people that's gotten PPP loans.
Well, until you get it forgiven, you don't have anything but money sitting in your bank that you got to pay back. The issue is that you need a calculus degree to fill out the PPP forgiveness application. It would keep me up. They're trying to simplify it. Go Google it and watch some YouTube videos. There are CPA firms out there doing webinars on this, and I can't even hardly follow it. It's advanced algebra. So,
well, it wouldn't do me much good to watch.
I think we need a separate conversation maybe on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, because they don't need to be. We have to figure out a way to where they cannot double dip from this situation, because it's not. They can't. As we talked about before, they cannot have expenses put down twice and all that. So we can't just say, well, they got it and don't worry about it and move on.
Well, that's where the audit schedule comes in. We give guidance on what you can put on there that you're saying you're spending PPP on. So anyways,
and I think that
philosophically, I think we're on the same page, Barry. I think we're just attaching it we're verbalizing it different, but we have the same goal.
I don't verbalize as well as you, but we can talk about it another time. I don't mean to belabor the point too long, but I mean, we just cannot allow.
Chris is saying
take advantage of us like that, or not necessarily take advantage of us, but take advantage of the government like that. Of the federal government like that, because if they didn't need the money and they never should have applied for it, and if they did, then they either need to pay it back or we need to get it back, one of the two. They can't just keep it.
We just need to ensure that the expenses are accounted for properly. Is that a
well, and the revenues too. We don't need to give them revenues they didn't need or deserve for PPP. If they never should have applied for PPP, they never should have applied for PPP. And we need to punish them for applying for it, meaning making them pay it back.
And that'd be something that we would have to notify the federal government about. That money goes back to them, not to us. And what we want to do is make sure our expenses are recorded properly, and that's why Chris wants the schedule. And then on the other side of it, that is going to be between them and the federal government. But we are obliged to pay
Well,
for
I
the
don't know if that's
individuals
exactly
receiving
true
Medicaid.
because we are the, I don't know if that's exactly true. We need to talk to Medicaid about that because we are a regulatory agency. So I'm not exactly sure it's not just their problem. I think it's
not
our
just their-
problem too, as this commission.
It is, and that's why we said we need an auditor to go in and validate that they're doing it correctly on our behalf, independent of us, independent of the providers.
Right.
Okay, I'm not opposed to that. I'm just saying we need to get to the bottom of it. That's all I'm saying.
You're exactly right. We do.
I'm
That's
not
why.
opposed to anything you're trying to do. I'm just telling you that we cannot allow them to get over on us like they have in years past for other things that are much smaller than this.
Well,
They've taken advantage of this commission way too long.
I don't think they're trying to get over on us on this, and I think our goal is to ensure that
last month they were refusing to tell you whether they got the money or not, weren't they? Weren't some of them telling you?
No. What I said is we have not asked them to disclose whether they've gotten PPP, and I asked whether, if they weren't volunteering it, if it was within our authority to make them tell us what they received.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt it is, and it is within our authority to make them tell us whether they did or not, and that's my point of my motion today was going to be to make them tell us. But I guess you've done that through making them fill out the form. This is what I'm saying.
I have not done that, but I will be glad to do so.
Well, I absolutely believe, and I'll take it before the commission to decide. We can make a motion right now. We can take it before the commission to decide whether we have the authority to do it. But I can assure you we do have the authority to ask them whether they got that money or not. Because we are ultimately responsible for what they do, all 39 of them do, as a commission. So the commission has a responsibility to know whether they got the money or not. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Okay.
And I'd be very surprised if our lawyer did not tell us the same thing.
All right, Robin.
So, Chris, you said that you have calls in to lots of different people to try to get updated information. So you'll continue that activity, whether it's with Medicaid or different groups that you've tried to reach out to for updates on guidance, correct?
Yes, ma'am. My problem is I've gotten absolutely zero guidance. I mean, none. And
right.
So we're going to have to create, time's ticking. I mean, we got audits going on right now. We have got to get our head around what do we want them to give us and when and how, and then how do we want to vet it? And so that's my recommendation. I just need your committee to decide, do you want to approve the final schedule and the audit supplement that I'm proposing that we do? That'll delay it a month, but y'all approve the directive. So if I'm going to do a supplement to the directive, I can call it a memo, whatever. It doesn't have to go out in that fashion, but somehow we've got to issue guidance and a requirement.
On that guidance, it needs to specifically ask, did you receive any of these four loans or not? Yes or no, and how much?
Right.
And then you can say whatever else you want to say. But it needs to ask the specific question. That would be my motion. In addition to what you're asking.
My recommendation would just simply be, once the guidelines have been established, I would send that to the funding agency and say to them, this is what I'm sending to my different agencies, and tell me whether or not there's some flaws in it. If so, I need to know, because that's the way. In other words, all I'm saying is we have to create a mechanism to drag them into this. My understanding is there were 70 agencies at SBA. They were instructed to get the money out of the door, period. Right. So we have to now create the vehicle you're talking about. And even though we're going to follow what Barry and everybody else is saying, but we need to put that on their table and say, this is what we are telling the folks. If it's wrong, then you tell us.
Maybe the key thing is we have to ask specifically in that document somewhere did you receive money or did you not receive money? So that we can say yes or no, you did or you didn't. So there's no ambiguity down the road saying, well, you didn't actually ask me if I got it. You just asked me how much money I spent. We want to know whether they received income and how much they received.
Agree.
Well, the audit schedule that I'm envisioning would have columns for each of these funding sources with not only amounts received, but also amounts that are intended to be claimed against those pots. And they would have to reassure us that those funds are not accounted for anywhere else in their other cost categories in our programs.
Okay, so if they didn't put zero, that means they got money. If they did put zero, they got no money.
I think we should still ask. I'm just saying the audit schedule I want would require them to put it in there as well.
All right, well, I'm not suggesting you're not smarter on this than me. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying we have to be unambiguous as to what we're asking for and tell them that we have every right to ask them anything we want to, anytime we want to. And if they don't like it, we'll discuss that at a further date. But they cannot tell us what we can or cannot ask them for. None of them can, because we are responsible for all 39 of them as a commission. The governor gives us that authority and the right to ask them whatever we want to.
So
if they lie to us, that's another matter, but we have to ask them first.
yeah. So I think I'd like to see Chris the guidelines. I'll just make a motion or ask someone to make a motion to share the guidelines that you come up with and send them to us. To Commissioner Miller's point, sharing what guidelines we do come up with and we want to send to the providers is semi-approved, blessed, reviewed by DHHS, Medicaid, whoever, to make sure that what we're asking is valid or accurate. Is that how I understood you, Mr. Miller?
So moved.
Okay, so.
Okay, well, we need a timeline as to how long that would take, because if they're going to take 3 months, that's too long. So
That's my concern.
But here's the thing now. All we're doing is putting those agencies on notice. It doesn't mean that we have to stop our progress. But if we don't put them on notice, then we have an issue. Because somebody come back and say, why you didn't do this, why you didn't do that. So all we're doing is putting them on notice and doing exactly what we said, Barry, so we can move forward and get all the answers that we rightfully deserve.
Okay, so we're doing both at the same time is what you're saying, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, Robin, you understand that?
Yep.
That's her motion. I say so moved.
Yeah.
That's the motion you just moved, to do both at the same time.
Yes.
Not to wait for one or the other.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, sir. Sorry.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Love you, Barry.
Okay. All right.
Love you, man.
So we're
Yeah, I love you, brother. Go ahead.
to the next item.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So the next item is the CARES, the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund, CRF,
yeah. So, there's money flying all over the place from the federal government like it's candy. And it's Halloween, and one of the Halloween pots that's out there now. The state has received an allocation through the CARES Act that they are just now getting around to distributing. And we've been attending their meetings. It's called the Accelerate South Carolina CARES CRF Grant Management Services Program. That's a mouthful.
Mm-hmm.
They have $1.9 billion that they are trying to distribute within the state. And you can go to their website if you want to go to Accelerate South Carolina and go to the CARES Act tab. They've got all their presentations and stuff in there.
$1.9 billion?
1.9 billion with a B dollars. Isn't that ridiculous?
Amazing.
Anyways, so they have taken this pot and subdivided it into seven pieces. A large chunk of it's going to Department of Employment and Workforce for unemployment. Some's going to Department of Education for different things like food service, Department of Health and Environmental Control for testing and monitoring for COVID, EMD for PPE stockpile and supply chain management, the Hospital Relief Fund for healthcare system, and the Office of Regulatory Staff for internet, for hotspots, 100,000 hotspots. There's $270 million that's left that's been given to the Department of Admin that is to be distributed just to state and local governments like ourselves. It's eligible for state agencies, institutions of higher learning, counties, municipalities, and special purpose districts. The funds are out there. There's a portal that we are signed up for. We're in the process of reviewing these funds and whether we're eligible and whether we should submit for them or not. The qualifying expenses are very well defined. The CRF is working hand in hand with FEMA. Some expenses you have to claim on FEMA and others with CRF. And if you do get a FEMA award at a state level, CRF will pay the 25% match on our behalf. So we're in the process of looking at this. We need to be careful as well not to double dip. We don't want to establish an expectation for our provider network and be hypocritical. So we are needing to look at this very closely. The problem is they've only given us 15 days to submit. So I haven't had time to talk to Pat and Mary even about this yet. So it's kind of hot off the press. Things are moving really, really fast. What I think we're going to do and what I'm going to recommend is that we apply for these funds, but we need to validate that there's a return clause where if we miss the application time frame, then we potentially have messed up because we should have asked for it. If we're awarded and if there's a reversionary clause or some way we can give the money back because we're like, oops, we shouldn't have done that, then I think we should proceed. The issue is we asked if it would, it's very clear that it will not replenish lost revenue. It's only for legitimate expenses. So we cannot do anything about lost day program billing or any other lost activities. We asked, and so did others in there, can we do grants for providers and other agencies to help them reopen and things like that? No, not allowed to do grants for other entities. It must be legitimate expenses for us, like overtime, emergency paid sick leave and emergency FMLA, PPE, the ion filters we had installed, all these kinds of things, HEPA filters. And so it's very, very rigid and restricted. I looked for every crack that we could pursue for our providers, and there just doesn't appear to be any. We are going to have a call with the actual CARES Act people to pursue this more one-on-one because everything we've done thus far was done in a group of 200 participants or something. So we haven't had the chance to actually nail them down with our specific questions, but reading between the lines and everything we can see, there really is no way for us to get into this for our providers. But that is our goal, is to see if we can't find a way that we can pay for PPE for our providers, pay for their hazard pay for their, can we aggregate them in since we're considered a, what's it called? Something health organization. Organized healthcare. So I'm going to push that hard. I'm going to really, really hammer them down on that because I think to the extent we can advocate for our providers and help them with any funding, and a lot of the funds that we just talked about are very restricted in how you can use them. You can't just go use it for whatever. Yeah, so the CARES Act is an opportunity if we can find the yes button for us to pull down some funds on behalf of our provider network. That's my main goal with it. And as I look at what we've incurred, trying to make sure whether we should request FEMA or CARES Act money for the stuff we've paid out ourselves for our own use.
So you're gonna concentrate on that 200 million?
That's all that's open to us.
Yeah, that's what,
270 million.
because the match is, the CFR is gonna pay for that, right? That 25%.
So FEMA does not have that limit. This is the state funds.
Okay.
So we go to FEMA. FEMA reviews and approves whatever expenses. Let's say they award us $500,000.
Did we lose them?
I think they're still here.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, you can hear you, but the camera going, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, we just had
here.
a really bad lightning and thunder strike, so if we lose you, that's what it is.
Okay. He had a bad one.
Here we're back. We see all the materials that we have to submit, we have to flow them through FEMA or CRF, one or the other. They will not cross over at all. They've clearly defined the tennis court, if you will. If it goes through FEMA and it's approved and there's a match requirement, CRF will automatically pay that on our behalf.
Actually concentrate in that area and look for the holes and see whether we can plug them.
Oh, the provider, can I ask a question? The caregiver relief funds that the providers are getting
Provider
now,
relief? Mhm.
the provider relief funds, I'm sorry, that they're getting and that we didn't get, can they get PPE and pay for hazard pay and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff out of that? So they do have an avenue to start paying some of those additional costs, even though their revenues have really not dropped. Okay, just want to make sure.
There's a variety of, yes.
Okay. So I know that you're fighting on their behalf, but I think that there's a delineation between the two.
Yeah,
So,
it's rough.
So I would recommend, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
that we move expeditiously on Chris's recommendation, looking into that 200 million and see what's appropriate that we can utilize and go through the cracks and try to get it.
Yeah, I agree.
The rest of that is forest.
Second, as long as we understand that if we decide we should not have gotten it, that we can give it back. That's the only thing I would say.
Exactly.
Right,
these are legitimate expenses. These are things we put out there.
right.
I mean,
I
I
don't
think,
see,
if they got money on the table, we ought to come get it. I don't disagree with that.
well, with the PPE, that's a big area.
The hazard pay for staff, is
Yep,
that part of
that's
it? Yeah, because
allowable.
we've also been paying out that hazard
We can
pay.
pay
Yeah.
this hazard pay.
Yeah.
we've been paying.
I said jump into it and look at this.
Well, there's just rules around it, and I want to make sure that we navigate
Right.
that properly. And anybody that knows me, I am
We're rule
I am
followers.
very stickler for the rules, and I do not like being a hypocrite. So I'm not going to speak one thing and do something else.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure, we're doing what's right.
But you filtering it out. I see you have filtered, because you went down from what is it? How many billions?
0.9 billion.
1.9 and filtered out where we can land in that $200 million area.
Yeah, they've already got, that, all that other money, they're already distributed.
That box is the only thing we're eligible for.
Okay, that's good. Excellent.
You get the leftovers.
That's all right. Listen, it's clear though. I think we can work with that. Yeah.
All right, so
Come on.
is approved, and we'll move to the next item, which is capital projects funding strategy discussion. Chris?
Sandra sent y'all, we talked about this last meeting, but not in depth enough. Now that we're in the new fiscal year and we need to start advancing the ball on our capital needs, I wanted to bring this back before you in a more defined manner to kind of see if we can't get some kind of decision made on our willingness to utilize the master lease program or the Conserve Fund or other lending opportunities that we have. Does everybody have the 5-year projected schedule that I sent out?
I think so. When did you send it out, Chris?
Sandra sent it out this afternoon.
Let's see.
It was in her email that
I saw the email.
Yeah.
It's in your, it's attached to your,
Right here. Yeah, this one.
all right, so,
It's marked agenda item 13.
Right,
correct, it is.
right.
Yeah, agenda item 14.
Yep, I got
So I'll start talking generically while we wait for Mary to find it. We have a bunch of deferred maintenance issues here. It's like a lot of other things that this agency neglected, and we just have a lot of facility needs and a lot of capital needs that honestly, I think we have two choices. We can continue to defer maintenance and only attack these things on our affordability based on our $3 million that we've historically paid for capital on an annual basis, and ignore all the other needs, which to me is not a viable recommendation. If you look at each year and you say, okay, so you're saying we got $3 million that we spend every year on capital, that's built into our budget basically, if you will. We're going to have to find the money for everything above that. And so what we're looking at are vehicles falling down around us, facilities not having things addressed that really need to be fixed, like roofs, and HVAC systems that are end of life and have R22 or whatever it's called, refrigerant. So anyways, I had brought this up before, and I know Barry had mentioned that he didn't believe that we should be borrowing funds, and his comment related to how we have just come out of such a bad spot. My approach is, yes, since we have come out of such a bad spot, we don't want to get back in that condition. So we need to be very prudent in how we spend our cash. If we start throwing cash around and addressing our capital needs through operating dollars, what's left, we then start to get back into the condition we were before, which is where we don't have money to do the things we need to do as an agency. The Master Lease Program is a program by the State Treasurer's Office. We had 4 or 5 State Treasurer Office staff talking to us about the Master Lease Program, and is used all over the state by universities, Department of Ed. All state agencies tap into that. And then the Conserve Fund is also a lending option for us, or a borrowing option, if you will, when it relates to energy projects, such as alternative fuel vehicles, which is something I want to look at. So what I'm asking you all, we need to start, like vehicles. If we decide we want to buy $1.5 million in vehicles, I will have an actual schedule for you, not just a number. We are working right now on actually coming up with the list of what we need. But for us to get out of we have 140 vehicles here, considering what's at regional office here and at the regions. Everything is pretty much old except for maybe 10 vehicles. And so we've got a real problem that we're trying to dig out of, and we're trying to methodically approach it and then maintain it as we go. So we're going to have to spend at least $1.5 million, I think, this year to start beginning to address our fleet needs. And so our regional center folks are in the process of making a list for those that are needing replacement, as well as what they want to replace those with. And we will bring that before you. But if we order those vehicles in September, we probably won't even see them till April. They take forever on state contract. It's not unusual to have a 120-day wait for vehicles to come in. So, you know, we need to make some decisions. I think philosophically is what I'm asking for right now, Ms. Chair, is philosophically, because our hands are tied. If we limit ourselves to $3 million a year, we really can't even begin to get out of the bind we're in. We're going to have to use borrowing options, in my opinion, to begin to tackle and address our issues. Keep in mind the interest rate on those loans is below 1%, so it's almost free money.
How do you think the legislatures will tours will view us borrowing money as an agency.
I have a phone call in to the folks I know over there to ask that of our finance committee members to see how they view this, but since most of the agencies in the state use this method, I don't, but I'm not going to speak for them, so I'll just wait for them to get back to me, and then I'll have an answer for you.
Well, I think that we need to table this until we have further discussion. We cannot make any decision on this whatsoever unless we're either gonna make a motion right now for us to I would say to forget about this issue for the next 6 months, or to table it until further
I don't
notice.
think we wait that long. I think we should do our due diligence with our legislators and see how they view this. And then we'll.
Well, there's a lot of legislatures in South Carolina, and there's a lot of them that have a lot of things to say about this agency. And because of that, and a lot of other reasons I'm not going to get into right now, I could not vote. I'm only one member out of 7, but I could not vote for us borrowing money in any way. I'm sorry, I cannot do it. That is completely contrary to what I'd want to do.
I think that we should feel the, I think we should feel the pulse of the water. At least we'll know whether we can pull the trigger or not. And I think if we come up with some type of document and in our own way, we can test the waters. I know I can. I can test the water to see how folks feel without it being an issue.
Well,
I'm speaking for Ed Miller now.
We can test
I
waters,
can
but
test the water.
We can test. I'm not disagreeing with testing waters, but to see what some of the members of the commission want to do. But I'm just saying that is not something we can decide on tomorrow, and we have to make sure we test these waters, as you call it, completely and thoroughly before we make any decision, unless we want to make a motion right now to table this for the next 6 months. Either one of those two things.
Mr. Chair, I was not asking for any action on this.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I was not asking for any action on this. What I was trying to do is talking about testing the waters. That's what I was trying to do, is figure out, am I barking up the wrong tree, or is there any life here that we can begin to pursue looking at our angles? That is all I was trying to achieve, because last meeting, Barry was very vocal, just like he is in this meeting, that he doesn't believe
We'll
in borrowed
continue to be.
funds.
I'm sorry, but we'll continue.
That's fine. That's fine. That's why you're a commissioner. You're free to do that.
Commissioner Rawlinson, I was actually able to talk with the governor about this week. He and I had lunch, and I talked to him about our cash problem and where we were at. And he said, we may have to look at something like that. So it's not something that the governor is totally opposed to. So I wanted to throw that out there so that you all know that I did have that conversation with him. I have not talked with any of the other legislators, but I will do so.
And I would agree with that. We should test. We should just feel the pulse. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Can you not write
Yes,
basically talking about the program so everybody's using the right language, that the government officials will understand what program we're talking about, that we're not going out to the local BB&T and taking out a loan for a car, that we are going through the state Department of Administration, and it is something that is state.
I mean, the treasurer office endorses the program.
Yes.
It's their program.
So basically, we want to make sure that when you go out there and talk about this program, you know what we're talking about.
Right.
So we'll send that out.
Okay, great.
All right. So I'll just make a motion that we will do some due diligence and maybe put it back on the agenda of this committee in 2 months.
So moved.
Second, 2 months is good.
All right. So that's what we'll move forward with the 2-month update after some due diligence on borrowing money from the state program. So, okay. So moving on to the Chief Financial Officer report, Chris.
2 things real quick. Just wanted to let the commission know again that we're going to be doing cost report training on August 25th. I still have not really gotten prepared for that yet, but I do feel like it's desperately needed. our providers have not received any kind of guidance whatsoever for years and years and years on how to properly prepare these, and as a result, we're getting basically what everybody thinks they should be doing,
Yeah.
which I can't blame them. I mean, it's not their fault.
Yeah.
So we're doing that training. We have 36 participants signed up. We have socially distanced training. We are renting out the Metropolitan Convention Center because we have nowhere to do that here. It's only like $800 to rent the room, and then there's some other costs in there as well on top of that. But we felt very strongly this needed to be in a workshop setting and in person. So we do have a lot of interest in this, so I'm happy that we're doing that.
Yep.
And we do intend to do this every year going forward.
Right.
And the final thing is, and I think you have an attachment maybe for the final June year end.
Yeah.
We need to present this to the commission. I told them we would. So this is after all bills are in for June 30 closeout. We ended up 7.9% below our spending plan, which is our budget. Again, for those that are maybe new with the terminology, we have what's called authorization, which we could go up to $808 million, but because we can't effectively match and draw down federal dollars, we adopt a budget of $770 million. Of that $770 million that we budgeted to spend, we only spent $710. So we had $60 million left. So that's very good. We're managing our expenditures very, very well. The issue is if your budget expenditures are $60 million below what you budgeted, but you only have $11 million in the bank, that kind of tells you that if you start spending at the level we had budgeted, we would have been 50 million in the hole. So we have to continue to be diligent about our expenses. And so we are working on our spending plan to present to you all at the September commission meeting. We'll try and button this up a little bit tighter. We certainly don't want to put out in a budget funds that we don't think we can generate. And then if we start spending at the level we budgeted, we're in trouble.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, that was it for my report.
All right. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I don't mean to prolong this because I do have to leave, but I was looking here for office and regulatory staff.
Yeah.
We have a lot of our agencies in areas where we need to probably look at the broadband situation. I saw that down here. That's another conversation, but I just wanted to.
So you're saying maybe contact them and make sure that they're considering how they go about deploying those hotspots?
Yeah, there's $50 million sitting there. And like I got Williamsburg County, there are some counties, Lee County, that have broadband issues. And I think we need to kind of look at those areas. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Commissioner Miller, where do you see that on the
I gave him, it's a handout that I was using and I just gave it to him.
Okay.
But it's on the Accelerate South Carolina website. If you go out there, they've got all their presentations and information.
Okay.
It's just one of their PDFs.
I think that's an area that we can look into. I think there's some monies there could be for some of our agencies.
Yeah. So do you think providers have problems with broadband?
Okay.
I think families do.
Families do, because see, here's what happens. In South Carolina, you have 20 cooperatives throughout South Carolina. Now, it's more than that because I use FCC, Farmers Telephone, which is Williamsburg County, Clarendon County, Sumter County, and some others. The broadband, if you go to, if you head into King Street, South Carolina, now they have it, but in order for you to get it on your cell phone, you have to be connected to Farmers Telephone. So that's an area this money could help offset. They still have to deal with Farmers Telephone, but they can pay some of that expense out of this money. That's what I'm thinking that we need to look into.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for bringing that up. it is a big issue in our state, broadband
Absolutely.
access. So
Absolutely.
I totally,
You got a lot of private telephone companies, telecommunication companies.
yeah, right. All right, well, if anyone wants to make a motion to adjourn,
Let me say one thing before we make a motion to adjourn. This meeting made it sound even more like that I'm opposed to, it may sound somewhat like I'm opposed to us fixing the problems we've had in the past. And I'm not opposed to us fixing the problems we've had in the past. I am opposed to borrowing money for a lot of reasons, 100 reasons, but I won't get into any of them right now. But I will say that I understand that we're in a difficult situation, but in the Christian circles, we call it, having to sorry, I was going to say something. I forgot what I was going to say. To atone for the sins of the past. And for years and years and years, this organization has refused to take money back from the providers in the tune of millions and millions of dollars. So we would have had the money to do all these things we need to do, but they chose to spend their $600 and some odd million in different ways. And now we are expected to fix all those problems. And if the legislature wants us to fix those problems, they'll give us the money to do it. They will not ask us to borrow money. But I won't go any further except to say that with that, and I wouldn't mind if, I wouldn't plan on saying that, but I wouldn't mind if that was in the minutes of this meeting. As a matter of fact, I asked that that be in the minutes of the meeting, what I just said.
And Barry, this is Miller. I'm not opposed or offended because what you've done, you woke up my brain, and I'm appreciative.
Okay. Let me just say, I would ask that that was put in the minutes of this meeting,
certainly.
according to the Freedom of Information Act, and I'll make a motion to adjourn. And I appreciate it, Mr. Rollins, for your, Ed, for your
All right, okay.
observation.
We stand adjourned at 5:14 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.